The first thing people notice when they see this week's parsha is the vast amount of mitzvot. And because of the vast amount of mitzvot, it's hard to see the connection between each of the parts. Rashi points out something very interesting when he notices in the first two parts of the parsha. At the beginning of this week's parsha, we see that there is a person who goes out to war. And that person at war sees a captive that he wants to take. And the Torah tells us that when you want to make such a decision to take a captive, you have to do it in a certain way. You have to be moral even when you make a decision that at its core seems immoral. Then we learn about somebody who has two wives and the fights that happen between them and the choices that the husband has to make. And the Torah tells us how to make that in a more moral way. Then we learn about educational difficulties with a child who rebels against his parents and doesn't listen and how to deal with that issue. Then the Torah changes gears and it speaks about somebody who's on his way, and when he sees he's about to take eggs from a nest, which is a very normal action, he decides to do it in a way which is the correct way. And he takes those eggs by first shooing away the mother bird. And then he builds a house. And when he builds that house, he decides to build it in a safe way and make sure that everyone's safe when they come over. He builds a ma'akah around the house. And then afterwards learn about somebody who plants a vineyard. And we go on and talk about people when they do normal things in their lives and they choose to do them in the most ultimate way, in the most ideal way. Rashi notices there's two veins in this week's parsha. There's a downward spiral what happens when you make a decision to take a captive. Even though the Torah tells us that it might happen, and you have to do it in the best way possible, but even so, the decision that you make to take that captive is a decision to go along a path that you have to deal with the outcome. And that outcome is not necessarily the outcome that you're going to want at the end of the day. You end up having two wives, you end up having educational difficulties in a family that's not as strong as it should be. But if somebody makes the opposite decision, a decision to go along life and wherever he is, look for the ultimate way and the ideal way to live their life by choosing to take eggs in a certain way, choosing to build a home in a certain way, choosing to plant their vineyard in a certain way, which tries always to do their very best, that decision always leads to more and more opportunities. Avira goreret avira, and mitzvah goreret mitzvah. That is the message that Rashi sees within this week's parsha. He's able to find that this parsha is about decisions. And I think it's a perfect message right now in Elul, when we're making a decision about how we want our next year to look. Right now we have that decision in our hands. And when we make that decision, we can decide to go on a path, which is always trying to deal with the issues that come up, or whether or not we make the decision to look at everything in our life as an opportunity to do the best that we can. Shabbat Shalom.